Today, I've got a very special guest joining me. He's a man with a 14-0 record, 12 KOs to his name. He's currently ranked number 4 in the WBA, and upcoming, he is a 12-round WBA world title eliminator. That's Darius Fulghum. Darius, appreciate you taking time to come on today, man.
I just appreciate your time for having me on, brother.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, we gotta get right to it, man. You've got a fight upcoming now. You're just about 2 weeks out from it. What's the emotions? What do you got going on in your mind right now?
Oof. Right now, bro, just I always think how extremely blessed I am. It's a
Yeah.
great opportunity. Shout out to Go to Boy and WBL. They've done a great job on putting in position for this opportunity.
Mhm.
So I'm just extremely blessed, and I'm ready to seize the moment.
You know what's crazy? I was going back and reading an article. I think it was from 2022 or 2023. I think actually like December 2022, and it talked about the game plan for you. And Golden Boy, I think it was Bernard Hopkins talking about you and saying, you know what? By 2025, that's the year I see Darius Fulghum becoming a world champion, being a guy that's going to compete for that. We're in 2025 now. You have this title eliminator. Is it shocking to you to realize the position you're in now?
I wouldn't say the word shocking. I've
Okay.
been extremely fortunate and blessed that everything I feel like is falling into the right time, and um, like throughout my whole entire career, amateurs included,
Hmm.
while I was in school trying to pursue my nursing degree,
Okay.
it was kind of tough for me, right? Like I
Hmm.
didn't know what path I was gonna go. And luckily for me, I graduated right before the Olympic trials came around and was able to seize that opportunity, join
Hmm.
Team USA. And then now unfortunately, COVID kind of got in the way of all that, but
Yeah.
was able to still make my mark. So I think once I turned pro, everything's been falling in line, and everything that we mapped out has been going according to plan.
This upcoming fight for yourself is by far the biggest one in your career. I believe you headlined before. I'm not sure if it's been more than one time before, but this is going to be the biggest fight of your life. Main event, title eliminator against another fellow top ranked guy. When you realize the stage you're going to be stepping up to and realizing that this is a very, very high level for yourself, does that bring a different level of maybe focus or intensity towards this training camp? Or what kind of goes through your mind realizing the stage you're going to be stepping up to?
No, nothing changed for me. I'll tell you one thing for me going to the fight, my mindset hasn't changed at all. Like I don't want to think of this fight as being anything different
Okay.
than anything in my previous fights because every fight is so important. If I did not win my pro debut, I would not be here now. If I didn't
Good
win my
point.
last fight, I would not be in this position now. And so the stakes I feel like are always going to be the same. I try not to in my head make this at a greater magnitude than what it needs to be.
Hmm.
I need this moment to feel like just any other day. So really that's my mindset. But ultimately, it is a big opportunity for me. I can't try
Yeah.
to say that it's not, because this propelled me right to where I'm trying to be, where I can contend for a world title. And so I'm blessed with that. I can't say it enough. I'm ready for this moment, though. But my preparation has been great so far. But as far as my mentality, nothing has changed.
I have to imagine you probably still have another week or two of training camp before you obviously go in and get ready for fight week and whatnot. But the way you feel right now, and I know, like I said, it probably would be a little bit better if I were to ask you this question a week or two, but where you
Right.
feel right now, is this going to be the best version of Darius Fulgham that we've seen?
I think without a doubt, honestly,
Okay.
especially in this one, I guess I would say I had like a lot more time on dialing in and locking in,
Okay.
compared to previous fights.
Sure.
But I've done everything I need to do, and that's all I can ask for is for my camp is make sure that I've prepared to my utmost ability, and I've done everything I need to do, and I feel like I've done that. So
Said now, you kind of look at this upcoming fight, and this is going to be obviously a huge fight for yourself. But if you were to make a prediction as of now, 2.5 weeks out from the fight, what do you think is going to happen on May 30th?
I can tell you for sure I know I'm gonna win.
Okay.
I said it with just a lot of confidence in myself. I think Beck is a great opponent. I think
Yeah.
he's a great competitor. He has a great pedigree, a lot of experience. But I really believe in myself a lot. I believe in my preparation, my ability. I think I got all the tools I need to win. How I win, I have no idea. I
Sure.
try not to think too far ahead into that, the specifics. But I think, like I said, it'll be my best performance for sure.
Now, as we said, this is going to be an incredible opponent, but when you talk about when this fight comes to conclusion, May 30th is done, the main event's done. As you said, you plan on winning that fight. What's the statement that you want to make? What do you want people to take away from Darius Fulghum and say, you know what? I think this about Darius Fulghum. What do you want that statement to be?
Well, the good thing about this fight, right, is kind of the narrative that started being portrayed is like, oh, this is a tough fight, big step up, 50-50 fight,
Sure.
which is something exactly what I've wanted, to be kind of on the other side of a matchup, right?
Mm.
Compared to beforehand, it was like odds are heavily in my favor to win.
Yeah.
And so when I had fights that I would dominate, it would look like, oh, it's just the opponent. This
Yeah.
is a bad opponent. But this is an opponent that they can't take away from. You
Mm-hmm.
know, he's a very credible guy, very durable, and the statement I want to leave is like not like a Gabe Rosado statement, boom, knockout. Like I wanted to be a fight where it's like, oh, yo, we thought this was gonna be close.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were wrong. And so I just want to put the statement, the fans, the vision on notice. Who I am, I think it's a perfect guy I can do this against, right?
Yep.
I come out and look stellar, look fantastic, then I have to give him my respect.
Yeah.
Right? That's the time beforehand, I don't feel like I necessarily got it, right?
Mm-hmm.
People think it's too early for me. So it's a statement performance how I kind of want to shock the world and make my name known. So anytime when I watch any sort of 168 fights, they have to mention me in the rankings for that. They got to mention,
Yep.
hey, we need to see Caleb Plant versus Darius. We need to see, Belanga versus Darius. We need to see Mungia versus Darius, or whoever the case may be. I
Yeah.
just want to put my name out there.
You just brought up an interesting point because 168 is an interesting weight class because of the fact that you have Canelo Alvarez, who's obviously in the later stage of his career. He's only going to have X amount of fights left in his life. And so, obviously, being that it's a title eliminator, most divisions would be a situation where you're guaranteed a world title shot next. Obviously, we don't know exactly how the cards will play out with him there. So, when you mention just what could possibly be next, and obviously, I don't want you overthinking this upcoming opponent, but you
Right.
mentioned a guy like Caleb Plant, who is obviously interim world champion there. Is that a fight you could be looking at? Is there something else you could be looking at in terms of guys? And Billy's obviously a great fighter. Mugia. Is that something you're going to be doing, or would you want to wait out until Canelo is available for yourself if you come out victorious on May 30th?
No, I don't see myself waiting on Canelo, honestly,
Okay.
because then I'll be waiting forever.
Good point.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of great guys in the division, and even beating Beck, I don't think is still deserving of a Canelo fight, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
there's certain guys that I feel like should be well deserving. I don't feel like Berlanga really deserves the Canelo fight. And ultimately, who knows what's going to happen with Canelo, right? I think the landscape of 168 is going to change a lot very soon. There's a lot of big fights at 168 coming up. Um, so who knows what's really going to happen? It's kind of hard to predict what's going to happen next,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? But I'm definitely not in a position where I'm going to wait on the Canelo. There's a lot of other big fights to be made and a lot of big fights and opponents that I want to be share a ring with. So um, we May 30th. We'll see what the landscape looks like after that. Like I said, you got Plain and Charlotte. I'm fighting again.
Yep.
I think either Hassan and Billy is fighting.
Yeah. I think he fights in July or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he's fighting Selecki, and you got Pacheco fighting McCumbee, and so
Yeah.
there's a lot of guys going. So we just got to see how the landscape changes. Who knows?
So basically, your mindset would just be, I just want to make big fights, stay active, and eventually we know it's the next 2 or 3 years. Canelo's probably going to be gone. At that point, we can really go for the world championship shots. Then.
Yeah, absolutely. We just want to put ourselves in a position for when the opportunities come up, we can take it. Right.
Yeah.
We just want to put ourselves in a position where even if say Canelo after the Crawford fight was to be done and retired, the belts then are opened up.
Mm-hmm.
They're free. They're free for all for anybody to go grab them.
Yep.
So I just want to put myself in a position where, that's the case, I can go grab it.
I like that, man. Well, I want to go into your journey a little bit because you have a great story getting to this point. I want people to get to know who you are a little bit better. And so, going all the way back, I just got to ask: was boxing the sport that you grew up loving? Was that what you always wanted to do, or when did you fall in love with the sport of boxing?
Man, I didn't. I was never a fan of boxing and never watched boxing at all growing up. I'm from Texas. I was kind of more like a football guy,
All right.
and my brother was a football player, and so I always looked up to him, and so that was always what I wanted to do. But anytime, like growing up, I just never had like that desire for it, that passion for it. I felt like it was just something I had to do, but I didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in high school, I started wrestling, and I fell in love with that because it was complete accountability. I had nobody else to blame, point fingers at.
Yep.
Like if I lost, because I lost. Because I won, because I won.
Mm-hmm.
And it taught me a lot about life. And so I started at high school. When I finished my senior year, I had this itch. I was like, man, I got to do something else. Like I really fell in love with that, but it was for such a short period of my life. And originally I was going to do MMA. Um, But then I stepped into a boxing ring. I fell in love with it immediately, and I said, "Oh yeah, this is what I'm gonna do." So
Mhm.
that's when I started watching boxing. I started watching
All right.
boxing. That was 2015, like around March when I started. So we didn't came up on now 10 years. I
Mhm.
started doing this, and so it's been an amazing journey. But I had to grow up and learn quickly because I didn't have I didn't start when I was 6, 7 years old with all this experience, right?
Right.
I started when I was 18, going on 19, and so I was on the fast track. I had to fight as much as I could, get in the ring with whoever. Um, but I've been blessed with the journey though.
So what was the differentiating point? Because you said obviously MMA was technically on the table for yourself. You did like wrestling. What was it about boxing that you said, you know what, this is what God's calling me to. This is what I really want to pursue.
Ooh, it's kind of hard to say what was the initial thing because I remember after I was wrestling, I went and did jujitsu for like a couple weeks.
Okay.
But uh, the coach at the time, he was I feel like he was kind of just using me for wrestling, and he wasn't really teaching or showing me anything.
Okay.
And so I was like, man. And once I started going to the boxing gym, I was like a lot better like relationship there
Gotcha.
with the first coach and stuff. And so I think ultimately that was kind of like the thing that I love and had a great bond. It was kind of it was really just like me and him in the garage, and
Sure, sure.
so that's kind of how I got started. And I think that relationship was a big catalyst on what kind of really got me into strictly boxing.
So you feel like you probably could have been quite successful either route it was. It almost kind of came down to who was the most relational person, and that kind of helped motivated you.
Yeah, I think I still would do good in MMA. Like a
Yeah.
lot of wrestling, my wrestling background, I still use a lot of things that I've learned in
Yeah.
boxing. And they always say, especially for wrestling, that's like a staple that you really need to have is a good wrestling background. And now I kind of got both. I do think I could transition and do MMA still.
Hmm.
Not gonna lie, bro, I can't do kicking though.
Fair enough.
Hey, listen, I remember watching was it Anderson Silva when he broke his leg from like
Yeah.
a leg kick and that traumatized me. I said, oh, I got like the weakest shins, you know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
All right. So we're not gonna go to MMA route. Then boxing's your safe
No.
place then.
Yeah. We're already locked in here. I already made a decision.
Absolutely, man. Well, what you said was crazy too, because like you said, you didn't start boxing until 19 years old. Now, that is something we have seen people. I know Deontay Wilder's most famous story. People talk about, not starting until 22 years old, but that's not the common thing. A lot of guys start off when they're really young. Their
Yeah.
grandfather, their dad, their boxers, whatever it was, and they just kind of grew up understanding the fundamentals. Obviously, it was the amateur ranks and whatnot. You don't start until 19 years old, and yet you're going to be fighting for a world title eliminator coming up soon. That's not a very common storyline you hear. So how are you able to progress and develop into the fighter you are, while even though you started so late?
Man, I was just so locked in and disciplined, bro. This is
Mm,
all I wanted. This is all I wanted to do. And granted, I was doing other things, right? I was still in school, still went to college, right?
yeah.
But the entire time I was in college, like everybody at PV knew that boxing was what I was going to do. I got my degree in nursing, but nursing was not what I planned on doing. Once I
Okay.
graduated, I was all in on boxing. Um, so I think that was the big difference maker for me was I was so locked in and dialed in on what I wanted.
Mm,
Um, and once you kind of know that, then it's just follow the pathway on how to get there. Um, but I was extremely disciplined, bro. I mean, I made a lot of sacrifices to get to this point. I mean, it definitely was not easy.
yep.
you
Sure.
know. Um, but good thing too, I didn't have as much wear and tear also from
Good point.
doing this from when I was 7, or I wasn't burnt out.
Yeah.
So once I started this and I had the love for this, it was always fueled. Like I didn't have any hatred, right? Like a lot
Mhm.
of people when they start younger, they kind of regret a lot of things they missed out from their childhood that they weren't able
That
to
is true.
do when that wasn't necessarily the case for me. So
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of pros and cons with it, but I think for sure the biggest thing on how to get this point is I was extremely locked in. Like I said, when I started, I made a decision. I said I'm gonna become a world champion,
Okay.
and I was so locked in on that. So I think that's the
Now, you also talk about something we have to get into, and that's the fact that you have graduated from college and you have a nursing degree. That's something that for a lot of boxers, it's not the same story, because when you talk about boxing, it's obviously not a collegiate sport where you can go to college and you get a scholarship and you go do that way. And you chose to still go to college and pursue academics, even though you already knew you wanted to be a boxer. Why was that the decision you made?
Well, I think it was important to really secure my future. It was important, for my family.
Hmm.
Because, boxing in any sport is nothing's ever really promised, right? Like, there's
Right.
so many things that can happen that can derail anybody. right? It doesn't have to be somebody's not good or talented enough. It could be something simple as an injury, an accident, or
Yep.
whatever the case may be. And I didn't necessarily want that to be me. And then I'm like, dang, like, what do I do now, right?
Hmm.
So it was important to me that I finished school first. But like I said, I mean, it wasn't easy because boxing was always what I wanted to do, but I had to sacrifice boxing. There was a point in time during school I had to take a lot of time off. Like I couldn't go to these amateur tournaments and be gone for a week.
Mm.
You know, there one time I was trying to go to nationals. I wasn't able to go. I had finals that week, and tried talking to the dean about it, but there's nothing they can do. I had to be there, right? And I don't want to fail.
Yep.
So there's a lot of missed opportunities I missed out on too to really make a name for myself in the amateur route where I wasn't able to go to these big tournaments. But I'm blessed. Like I said, everything happened for a reason.
Yep.
I'm here now, so
That had also be kind of an interesting situation because I think right when you graduated, it was COVID time. And so you're at a situation now, obviously, that nurse were high in demand. That's something you could have obviously pursued and went right into if you still wanted to. But I have to ask long term, is that something that you would ever go back and try being a nurse if you're later on in life? That's something still on the table for yourself post boxing career?
but one thing I gotta mention too, so this is another big thing that I realized, especially turning pro and pursuing my boxing career was when I really realized how much I wanted this. And so I was getting ready to try to go for the Olympics and stuff, or
Hmm.
still on Team USA, and we were getting paid a little bit. We weren't getting paid, much, and
Yeah.
I had classmates who during this time during COVID who were getting travel nursing contracts, and I'm talking about they're making like 18K a week.
Yeah.
This time they're making big money. And not for a second during that moment did I ever think in my head like, oh man, like, let me go, forget all this. Let me go chase this money and go get these nursing travel contract jobs.
Yeah.
And I think that was the big moment I realized how much I really wanted this because I
Mm.
wasn't just chasing it. I can go make easy money easy,
Yeah.
right? Okay, let me not say easy money,
Yeah,
like
sure. Yeah. No, I see what you
but
mean. Yeah.
but it was already it's already secured, right? Rather than what I'm doing is a lot different. Any boxer will tell you this is a tough business, a tough industry to be in.
Hmm.
And so I think in that moment was when I realized how much I really wanted this. I never looked back. It wasn't even a thought like, oh man, let me go get this money,
Okay. That's
right?
a huge thing. I got to follow up with that because I feel like so many people, give up on the dreams for the bag. And I get it, obviously, the sense of providing the certain people that do need the money and whatever that is, and that's fine. But at the same time, like you said, it's not always about the money. You want to become with the best version of yourself and what you are meant to do. And so you obviously chose that. You could have went the, as you said, in a sense, easier way in terms of easier money, more guaranteed money is probably the right word
Right.
to say there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you chose to pursue what you loved, even though it wasn't guaranteed. Walk us through that and just kind of giving inspiration to other people that are in this certain situation, that 18 to 22, 23 time range. Why should they pursue what they're meant to do, what they want to do, as opposed to just going for the guaranteed money?
I'm always a big proponent of pursuing passion over money, right?
Hmm.
Like I know too many people who work in jobs they hate and they can't stand. They're miserable. Their life is miserable
Hmm.
just because they're making a little extra dollar, right? I'm always going to tell people to pursue their passion over that, because you'll live a much more peaceful and happier life. And so, I mean, that was a big thing that I learned was I enjoy what I do. And there's plenty of times where I didn't have nothing. I had nothing in my bank account, nothing in my pockets, but I was still so happy to be doing what I'm doing.
Mm.
And it's simply just going to the gym and trying to pursue my dreams. And so, and look, money ruins a lot of people, and I'm not going to try to sit here and say money is important. Money is extremely important. We need it to live. I'm not going to
Yep.
sit here and say it's not, but a lot of times your passion will bring you some money.
100% agree, man. Now, let's go to that Olympic experience because obviously you made the qualifications, you nearly qualified for the actual Olympic team, then COVID got in the way, obviously shut down the eliminator, and they just had to go take a few guys to the Olympics. It was a hectic, crazy year that hopefully never happens again. You got put in that weird just situation there. Walk us through that whole process and how that all went for you and how you handled that.
It was a little weird because when it first happened, we were kind of just unsure what was going to go. Was Olympics still going to happen,
Right.
right? Then we find out, okay, it got postponed a year. So we stayed on the team. We're still able to compete and travel. Went to Spain, Bulgaria. Was able to do different tournaments, get some more experience. And then for 2021, we're supposed to go to Argentina and qualify for our spot. Um, so now it's rolling around. We're in training camp, getting ready to go. I mean, we're going to leave in probably in a couple weeks. And we find out that that tournament got canceled for us. And they said it was because of like logistics reasons or something that Argentina couldn't host it.
Hmm.
Um, but so now it's up in there again. It's like, okay, well, what's going to happen, to us? Like, what are we doing? And ultimately, they made the decision that they're going to go with old ranking points to secure the spots for the American region,
Hmm.
um, which kind of left us out to dry. Where it was like we didn't even have an opportunity to qualify for our spot.
Yeah.
They went by, and that's how some of the pros came back. And so it wasn't just me; it was a couple other guys on the team too, where we were just like, you know. And I know the team, they try to advocate for us to try to give us a chance, but there's nothing that can kind of be done.
Yeah.
And so I was soaking on that for like a little hot minute, where I'm
Yeah.
just kind of just like, oh man, like really feeling bad for myself. But ultimately, like I said, it is what it is. It happened. There's nothing I can do to really control it.
Right.
And it was just time to move on. There's other things in my career I wanted to do. Now it's time to go to the pro side. And so at that point in time, we just had to make the transition. But I still supported all my guys too, as was able to go to Tokyo.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, because that's an amazing experience, man.
Right.
And it was a lot different that time around too. Especially with COVID, we still had these protocols. Just competing in that time was a weird space, just mentally for a lot of people because we didn't have really interactions with anybody else. We would go overseas to go compete, and we're kind of like locked in a room.
Yeah.
We'll come out to train for a little bit, go back to the room,
Yeah.
then we come out to come eat, then go back to the room, then come out to go train, go back to the room. So it was a time of like this weird isolation. I started to realize what isolation do to a lot of people.
Hmm.
And it was a weird time for me being on Team USA during that time because I feel like I never got to showcase the best version of myself. I started to realize what that isolation was doing to me mentally when it was time to get ready to compete,
Sure.
right? And
Hmm.
so I learned a lot about myself during that process. So I think everything was well worth it because it's prepared me for where I'm at now.
Was that transition easy for yourself? Obviously, there's a big difference between amateur and pro fighting. Was there a difference for you? Was it pretty easy, seamless transition? Obviously, it's not easy ever, but it was a transition for you to just kind of get a hold of it pretty easily, or what was the transition like?
You talking about from amateurs to pros?
Correct. Yeah. Yep.
Honestly, I feel like it did because I didn't have an amateur style. Amateurs was not necessarily my forte. I was not
Okay.
a 3 round fighter.
Right.
I never was, never had been. I was never like quick, twitchy, with quick in and out movements, right?
Yep.
Since it wasn't my forte, I was more of like a breaking guys down type of guy. So
Hmm.
that's why now doing these 10, 12 rounders, I feel like it's better suited for me
All right.
because it gives me time to adjust, give me time to figure my opponent out and start slowly, slowly breaking them down. Um, and that's why I think obviously in the pros I have a better advantage at. Rather than amateurs, not so much. So pros is a lot more suited for me.
Right. All right. So you had quite the interesting start in terms of a promotional company. I know you were Probellum at very, very beginning parts of your career. Then obviously everything happened with them when they folded and all these things occur. Golden Boy ends up picking you up, and you've obviously been with them ever since. What was that beginning portion like? I'm sure as a young guy, you're trying to get yourself settled, and that's going on in the background. How did you deal with that, and what was it like eventually coming to the conclusion that you're going to be with Golden Boy?
Well, it was interesting because I didn't know anything about the pro business, right?
Hmm.
And technically I will say that I'm still learning about it. There's a
Sure.
lot that I don't know. Um, and especially during that time, I didn't like I had other deals on the table and stuff. I went with Pro Bellum. Was thinking that was the best decision at that point in time, and it was great. I got 3 fights under them, but things kind of happened with them and it kind of fell through. So now was the time where I had to kind of figure it out myself, and
Hmm.
so I took a couple fights unsigned before I ended up signing with Golden Boy. Um, but signing with Golden Boy was I'd say the best decision that I made. I don't regret it at all. They've done such a great job. I enjoy the staff, all the team, all the events that I fought on. They've been amazing. They've been fun.
Hmm.
I learned a lot of experience. I feel like, especially even the matchmaking, they've been moving me at the right pace.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, like I said, I've learned a lot from the pro business. I think any fighter tell you learn something every single fight and it may not be something as simple as like in the fight, right? Like throughout the whole beginning of my career, I didn't necessarily really get hit like that at all. So I still, for a while, didn't know what it was like to get hit. But I learned a lot of stuff in my preparation on how I like to, when I'm cutting weight, on my diet,
Hmm.
what I like to do in camp, getting ready for a fight to make sure that I'm feeling my best. So one camp I do something, and then I say, I didn't really care for that. Let me switch up and add something different. I'm gonna start doing these sprints on these days and doing long distance runs on these days.
Hmm.
Sparring. Now I'm doing more rounds. I'm sparring. Uh, this we need for this round fight, or changing my schedule or how I'm doing my sparring rounds. So you kind of learn a lot just on the preparation part too, and you just get a lot more comfortable in it than dealing with the media stuff that comes with it as well.
Hmm.
Um, so they did a great job on slowly moving me up. Where I feel like now, May 30th, I feel like we're perfectly ready for this moment.
I know I said in the beginning of this interview, but the fact that we go back 3 years ago and they already had a mapped out plan for you that you're going to be fighting for world title in 2025, and that's now come pretty much to fruition. Obviously, you had to do your part too, winning the fights, getting to the situation too. But just take us through just Bernard Hopkins, Oscar De La Hoya, and how good they've been to you in that sense of kind of making sure, like you said, perfectly matchmaking you, getting to the right situation, and being true to their word, saying, you know what, like you said, title eliminator now in May of 2025. Obviously, it will be on the table to possibly have a world title shot if that's available by this year. Walk us through that aspect of just how your relationship is with those two guys.
Man, it's been great, man. I talked to Bernard a lot. I talked to Oscar a lot.
Hmm.
Uh, Besides just boxing stuff, they always still give me their wisdom,
Yeah.
things after the fight on certain tactics or approaches that I should have done in the fight. So they've been instrumental to the growth of my career. And the most important thing you can ask for any promoter, manager, anybody in the business is that they keeping their word.
Yeah.
What they say they deliver on. So ain't nothing worse than somebody over promising and under delivering, right?
Right.
Saying,
Hmm.
"Oh, we're gonna do this, this, and that." One thing about Golden Boy I say is they kept their word, and that's the thing that means the most to me. That's one thing I'm extremely grateful for them for, and to be led by two Hall of Famers and those two guys.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, man, it's been the best.
That's the cool thing too is that you talk about these two guys. They're both Hall of Famers. They've both been in your shoes before. They've been more than successful in the sport of boxing. Being able to pick their brain, kind of just get a better understanding, and like you said, learn from your flaws, learn from them, and you kind of utilize them as another coach or trainer in a sense too in that aspect. How cool has that been for you?
It's been dope. I mean, it's been times I remember. It's funny. I'm fighting a southpaw, and I remember talking to Bernard about this once. And I was watching when he fought Tarver,
Hmm.
and I was trying to ask him on some of his tactics that he was doing in that fight. I remember asking him, I said, "Man, how was Bernard able to really set up?" Because I was watching the difference between how Bernard was fighting Tarver versus Roy Jones.
Hmm.
I remember asking Bernard about that and how he was able to really set up him to keep catching him constantly with his right hand. So over and over again, but it was all in the setup though. Rather than I think
Hmm.
Roy Jones is a lot faster fighter than Bernard, but Roy wasn't able to capitalize it like Bernard was, and it'd be like little subtle things like that, and it was cool to be able to pick um, Hopkins' brain about that.
Yeah. All right, well, I got a few more things before I let you go, Darius, and one of which is that we kind of briefly touched up on this as well, but when you look at, your future, let's say the next 12, 18 months, how many fights do you see yourself doing? Where do you see yourself? Like, if I were to talk to you again, like I said, in 12 to 18 months, where do you think you'll be in position-wise? World champion, how many fights you've accomplished? What do you see? Like, where do you see yourself 12 to 18 months from now?
We said a year from now, next summer. Like I said, the landscape is changing a lot. I definitely feel like I should be in a position where if I'm not a world champion at that point in time, then that is definitely what will be coming next.
Okay.
Like I said, we're limited now, so my next couple fights should be huge mega fights against big names. So
Hmm.
by that point in time, to answer your question, I should be a world champion.
Love that, man. Well, is there anybody you have specifically on your mind? Let's say you get past Beck. Is there somebody else in your mind that you say, you know what, that's a guy I would love to fight? Whether that be as a guy that's a fun legacy fight, that'd be something that just would be exciting fight to have happen. Is there somebody else you'd want to fight?
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of guys in the division. If I think there's anybody I want to fight, probably be Berlanga the most. He
Okay.
kind of has like this arrogance about him that I'm not necessarily too much of a fan of.
Sure.
Um, so if anybody, if I wanted to fight, it'd be him.
All right, man. Well, I got one final question for you. It's the question I wrapping up every interview with. That's talking about your legacy. When your boxing career is done down the road, what is it that you want to accomplish, and what do you want to be remembered for what you've done inside and outside of that ring?
Okay, so I got kind of probably like I would say energy you haven't heard of before. And there was this interview Mike Tyson did,
Hmm.
and kind of around the time when he was fighting Jake Paul or whatever. And it was like a little kid that asked him this question, kind of a similar thing about his
Hmm.
legacy. And his response to that really was that he didn't care about legacy. Legacy is all in the ego.
Mm.
He said, "Who cares what kind of person I am to really care about when I'm gone? What do people think of me?" It's a very egotistical thing, legacy, and it kind of resonated a lot with me. You know, I've been
Mm.
reading these books about the ego and stuff, and as much as when I started my career, how much I cared about legacy, in a weird way, I don't really necessarily care about too much. You know,
All right.
obviously, I do want to give fans fights that they enjoy, but one thing I enjoy doing the most is doing this, winning, and winning in spectacular fashion.
Mm.
So whatever comes with that, comes with that. I just want to be present in the moment. I'm not too cared about how I'll be remembered after all of this. I just want to enjoy my time doing this while I can.
Absolutely, man. Well, Darius, I appreciate you taking time to come on in, man. I can't wait to see what guys got in store for you, and best of luck May 30th.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate you.
Of course, you always welcome on, man. God bless.
All right.